So hello everyone, and this week is week 8. So last week we have introduced some fundamental knowledge about web design. And in this lecture, we're going to continue this topic, and I will talk about some a little more advanced techniques about the web design. So in today's lecture, first we'll talk about some stylish web design. It's mainly focused on the usage of a CSS, which I've mentioned last week. So how to use CSS to further decorate our website. The second is dynamic web pages. There are some techniques how to add the dynamic element into the web page. So that is all of today's lecture. About readings, so you can continue to read some web development elements in our textbook or some other useful online materials. So first is a stylish web design about the CSS. CSS, as we introduced last week, is called Cascading style sheets. So it specifies the appearance of the HTML elements. And this is not a program language, it's just a stylish language, or you can call it as a script. So in order to develop a nice and professional website, there's one rules is that we should keep the consistency in all the web pages. So in one website may contains different web pages, and we should keep the same style in the different pages. And this is important. So by using the CSS, this styling language, we can achieve it in a much efficient way. So we can use the CSS to change a lot of things in the website, such as the text font or the text color, text size, etc., or the list icons or numbering style. About tables, we can change the table borders, shading, size, etc. And we can also adjust the text alignment or the positioning of the elements, and many things. So it's very efficient to use the CSS to decorate our website. So let's recall what we learned last week about this. If you remember, for the HTML, it just describes the basic elements in one website, but it doesn't tell you how to place each element and how to make a little dynamic. So by using the HTML plus CSS, we can have more precise control of all the elements. Then we can use this to draw the face. So that's the important thing about the CSS. So in this lecture, I will tell you how to decorate your website by using the CSS, this scripting language. So let's talk about the types of the CSS. So the CSS, it basically have three types: the inline style and the internal style sheet or the external style sheets. So first is inline styles. Inline styles is very simple. It's just directly applies to individual and groups of elements. So here is an example. Here is the HTML, the language. So if you want to change the hello world, the text color, for the inline style, you just need to directly put the CSS, the scripting language, directly within this hello world, this body or tag. So which is the header. So you just type the style, then the color you want, and then the text color can be changed. So if you have several hello words or different other text, if you use the inline style, you have to do it one by one. So that's why this inline styles is not recommended, because it's very insufficient, and it will be hard for you to maintain your website if your website contains a lot of different elements. So the second one is called the internal style sheet. Compared with the previous inline style, internal style is more often used because it's more flexible and it makes our web design more clear. And to use the internal style, you first thing you need to know it only applies to a single web page. So if the website may contains different web pages, then you have to define this to each web page individually. And also it should be specified in the document head area. And here's the example. In this HTML, if you want to use the internal style CSS, in the head area, we need to define this area, like start with the style. And then you can type the style type equal text slash CSS. So this statement is not mandatory. So if you just didn't type this one, doesn't matter. So in this example, we still want to change the hello world text color. So, and this tag hello world belongs to h1, this tag. So we need to type in that one here, and we want to change the color to blue. So and here's the output result. So if you have more things to change, like the head to or a paragraph, you can put everything here. So in this way, we can change our website, the styles much more efficient, and also make the web design very clear. So because everything is defined here. So the last type is called the external style sheet. So for the external style sheet, it is we can share it across the multiple web pages, and we need to specify this in the separate file. So the format is .css. So that's the file. Together with the HTML file. So here's the example. In order to use the external style sheet, we need to define the header area as well. The most importantly, you need to define this. So where do you put your CSS file, and what's the name of the external style sheet file? Here we put in the CSS folder, and the name is called style.css. So just like this. So if we want to change the hello world text again, so we can first we need to define this style.css, then we can change the color in this CSS file here to same as we need to change the hello world links to h1 tag. So in the CSS file, we need to define this h1 and we'll change the color to green. And in this way, we can very flexibly to change the style across the different web pages. So this method is the most recommended method. So one thing you need to remember by using this style is that the style is applied downwards or inwards. It means that these three styles has the priorities. So the external style has the lowest priority, internal style has the intermediate priority, and the inline style has the highest priority. So if we want to use these three styles together to change the style of one element, and so the inline style will override everything above. And if we only have this external and internal, so the internal style will override the external. So yeah, so these three styles can be used at the same time, which is allowed by the language, but it's not recommended to do that because it may cause some problem to your web design, because you may get confused which style you want, because you have too many definition in too many places. So please bear in mind. Then let's talk about the way of adding styles. So to use the CSS, you need to know this CSS selector. So when we use this CSS, we need to precisely control each tag or each element, each styles. So we need to select which element or which tag we want to change. So that's the syntax of the CSS selector. First is the the element of selector. Here is the any tag, for example, the header or the paragraph or the table or list. So that's called selector. Then that's followed by the property. So what things you want to change, like color or the font size or the some other things. And then is the separator, followed by the value. So which value you want to change. For example, the font size, you want to make it how large you want it to be, or the color. So what color you want to change, and then is the another declaration separator, the semicolon, and then is the end of the declaration. So that is the whole part of for the selector. First, let's talk about how to change the colors of the text. So in the CSS, to change color, first you need to select which part you want to change as a selector. So you want to change the body or the header or the paragraph, then followed by color. So if you want to change the color, you can change the text color, or you can change the background color. So that's two different keywords. And then it's the value. So for the value, as we mentioned last week, we can just use directly the name of the color, or you can use the hex value of this color, which you can check online, or you can use the RGB array to personalize to change the color. So 3 ways. Then it's the font. So for font, it's very similar to the color. First, you need to also define which part you want to change, the body or the paragraph or the header, and followed by the keywords. So you can change that's the color. So you can change the font family. So which font type you want to select, or the font size. So then you can use the pixel or px or em. So both way you can change the font size or the font weight or normal or bold or something else. So it depends on your requirements. So also you can have this write the font changes like this. So you can start with font and followed by the different values of the font. So our web browser can automatically recognize the different value. For example, the normal means the weight. This font family means, so this means the font family. So our browser can automatically recognize what is this parameter. And then we can also have some text decoration. So especially you want to highlight some part of your web page. So there are several ways to do text decoration. So we can draw different lines to text, for example, the underline, or you can just underline with different types of lines. So you can use the dots, and also you can change the color of the underline. You can also change to the wavy style, or you can also do this both underline and overline, and followed by the color of the underline or overline. Or you can do the cross line. So then you can use this line slash through to do the cross line, or followed by the color. So that this color can be before this keywords or after this keywords. So our browser can automatically recognize also what's the meaning of your text decoration. And next style is called text shadow. So text shadow used to use in the old style website a lot, because previously we don't have many ways to highlight or to design a colorful web page. So at that moment, text shadow was used a lot. So for the text shadow, and here's the syntax. First is the edge shadow or edge index. It's for the horizontal or the vertical. So that's the vertical index. That's the blur radius. Radius. So how blur you want your shadow to be, and this text or some other things. So here is the example. So to have this effect, we can define the color of the shadow by hex value. That means this almost yellow color, and that's the 1 pixel of the shadow. So it will move down to 1 pixel, and 0 means in the vertical there's a no shift, and 10 pixel means the radiation blur radiation. So it means we want to make our shadow very blur. So you can see in this flag it's very not clear, very blur. And here's the other example. So we want to make our shadow red. So that's red. And X is the horizontal shift of the shadow, and 5 is the vertical shift of your shadow. And in this case, we don't define the blur radius, so you can see the shadow is very clear. And also, you can put many shadows into one text. So you can just put several shadows. They separate by this comma. So then you can have this very blur, very nice style of your text. So you can try by yourself later. So then the next style is line height. So we can use this keywords line dash height to change the space between different lines. And so this value can be, the unit can be pixel or EM. So EM is a scalable unit that is used in the web document media. And EM is equals to the current font size. For example, if the current font size in document is 12 pixel, so then 1 EM equals to 12 pixel. So you should remember that. Later is the margin, border, and the padding. And here, then this figure shows you the difference between margin, border, and the padding. So in the center is our content, and the first round is called padding. So we have a different direction with a different name of padding. So later is the border, and the outsider is the margin. So you can change the different thickness of the each area by like margin, border, and padding. And for the border, you can change the border width. So by giving different value, you can change the thickness of the different area. And next is the text alignment. So the keywords text align with the different value. It could be left line to center or right, or justify to change the different text alignment in your website. And this is very similar to our the Word document. Then it's the letter and the word spacing. So you have this keyword letter dash spacing, word dash spacing to change the space between the letters and the word. And then it's the list. We can use a CSS to change the bullets of the list or the numbering of the order list. So here is the inline style. So because here we just for teaching purpose, we just in order to make things clear, I just use the inline style. So for you, you can change to use some other style. So for example, here we want to change the bullet to square. Then in this unordered list, we just we put here style list style. Then we can specify to be square. And later, we can change the inner list to be bullet to be circle. Then for the inner list, we'll change the bullet style to circle. And similar for the order list. So we want to change the letter for the order list. For example, in this example, we want to specify the order, the number for the to be upper alphabet. So then we just specify here list type, then upper dash alpha. And for the inner order list, we can change to another style. So for inner list, we change to the list style, and the value is lower Roman. Yeah, so that's the way to change the bullet style. And one thing here, we can also make a list to start from some letter in the middle. For example, here we want to the numbering from the 4. So here we just set list dot style, then the lower alpha, then we start from 4, which is D. So in here, it won't start from A, and then it start from D instead. So we can use CSS to change, very flexible, change the ordering or the bullet in the lists. And by using the CSS, we can even insert image into the list. So for example, in this order the list, we can use the style, then to use this URL to insert a online PNG figure into this list. So yeah, that's another way to insert something into this. But actually, it's very flexible with the CSS. You can insert some other types of multimedia file into list. Now is the table. So we can use the CSS to change the style of the table. For example, the border style or the border width. So for the border style, for the keyword is border dash style, then you can change to solid or dotted or dash or even double. And for the border the width, you change to different thickness, the width of the border. So the syntax is like this, which is very straightforward. So that is all about the ways of adding styles. So later you should try everything by yourself. Try to change, use different parameters and values, and try this method in web design. Now let's talk about the custom style elements. So first, I will introduce this ID selector. The ID selector and the class selector, there are two very important selectors. I will give you details of these two. So first is the ID selector. So ID selector uses the ID attribute of the HTML elements to select a specific element. So the ID of an element is unique within the page. So the ID selector is used to select one unique element. So to select an element with the specific ID and write, we need to write the hash, the character before it, and followed by the ID of the element. So here's the syntax of the ID selector. Begin with the hash character followed by the ID name. So this name you can give any names you want. Then in the curly bracket, first with the property you want to change, then it's the value of the property. Later when you want to change some text style before within this tag name, so follow with the space, then you put ID equals as a keyword. So here's the name you just given. So the text style will be changed according to here you just defined. And here is the example to show you how to change the style by using the ID selector. So in the beginning, with the hash character is this ID name which is given. So that's intro. Then it's in the curly bracket. The first is so we want to change two properties. First, the font weight, followed by the value and this text color. And then it's the red value we want to change. So in the main body, we want to change two different places. So in the first and the third paragraph. So we want to change. So in the tag name, we just give a space and the ID equals to the ID name we just given. So that is first one, and for the third one, we do the same thing. So then as output, you will see that for the first and the So the paragraph, the text has been changed with the font weight and the cap color. So that's the way to use the ID selector. So then it's the class selector. So for the class selector, it is quite similar to the previous ID selector. So the major difference is, so for the class selector, it's begin with dot, which and instead of the hash character. And then the difference between the ID and the class is that ID can be only used to identify one element, and but for the class it can use to identify more than one. So for the ID selector, there's another important thing you need to remember is that you can only use it once only in each page. So you cannot use it for multiple times in one page. So please remember that. Then it's the class selector. So class selector, to some extent, is quite similar to the previous ID selector. So difference that it begins with the dot instead of the hash character, and for the and difference between ID and class is that, as we mentioned, ID can be used to identify one element, but a class can be used to identify more than one element. So here's the syntax for the class selector. So you begin, we have the dot character, then it's the class name. You can give any class name followed by the curly bracket. The same as before, you have your property for the value. So you can have several property and value, depends what you want to change. Then in your body, so if you want to change anything, then in the tag, you need to specify class equals as a keyword, and it's followed by the class name you just give, and later the corresponding text, the style will be changed according to your design. So this is a very good example to show you how to use the class selector. So in the header area, we need to define the class. So here we define two like basic classes. So first is important. So that's a class name. We want to change the font weight to bold. So the second class is the warning. So we just change the text color to red. And this one is very like special for class. So you cannot use it in the ID selector, but you can use it as a class. So you can combine important and warning together as a joint class name. And then you can also add additional property in your disjoint class. So in the body, so if you want to change the first paragraph according to the class importance, so we need to just the tag, we just put the class equals to the importance in this tag. So later this paragraph will be the style will be changed according to the important contents, like the font weight to bold. So this changed. And in this paragraph, so we use the class warning. So we just put the class equals to the warning class name here. So then in the corresponding output, so this paragraph, the color text color will change to red since we use the warning. Here is the warning. Change the text color to red. And for the fourth paragraph, we use the join to class. So here's the class. Class equals to the join name, important, and with space and warning. It means that we use this joint class, and since we also added some additional property here, so you can see that the output of this paragraph is it is both bold and turned to red, and also the background changed to the silver. So that is the main usage of the class. So here again, we want to mention the difference between ID and class, because it's not easy to distinguish the usage of these two. So in this example, we have both class and ID. So for the class, we have like same as before, we have two basic classes. First is important, then is warning. We also have the joint class here, and then we have the ID with the intro, as also from the previous example. So you can notice that here for the important class, we define twice. So you can see that even we define twice, but actually the first one, second one, they do not overlap with each other. So also they do not override with each other. So if we define twice, it means that they both will be effective. And for the ID selector, you cannot do like that. You cannot define the same ID twice, which is not allowed. And then you can see that for the as body, so in the first paragraph, we use the important class to change the style. So since the important here would define twice. First is the font weight to bold. The second time is to change the text color to yellow. So that's why in the output, the first paragraph, both the font weight is changed, also the text color is changed. Then let's look at the third paragraph. So for third paragraph, we use the both class and ID together. So you can see that here with the warning class is to change the color to red, but the ID selector is to change the color to blue. So eventually you can see that the text color is changed to blue, not this red. It means that the ID selector overrides the value given by the class. You can understand like this. So you can think the priority of the ID selector is higher than class. So when you use this at the same time, the ID will override the value from the class. And same for the last one. So here's the join class, both important and warning here. So we just as previous example, it will be joined together to have like the multiple effect. Here you may ask why in this joint class this text color is red, not yellow, because if you notice here, the warning class is changed to text color to red. So when you have the important both font weight and color and yellow combined with warning, so the warning value will override the previous the important text color. So final color is red, not yellow. So here is I would say it's not the trick, but it's something important you need to understand. So what's the final output based on what we write? There is a hyperlink. So hyperlink we have introduced it last week. Last week we have I've told you that to use hyperlink we should use the tag A, and tag A is a one-sided tag, so there's no ending tag. So to add this link to this link name, we should use this href, the keywords, and put the URL in this hyperlink. And this week we're going to talk some other properties in this hyperlink. So we can change the text decoration and colors of this hyperlink, and also we can change some other actions to the hyperlink. For example, the hover. Hover means that when you move the mouse, the arrow into the hyperlink, the color of the hyperlink will change. So in this case, we can change the color to red from the original color, and also to active means that once you click on this hyperlink, the color of the hyperlink will change. So, and also if this hyperlink is a list, we can change the list properties like bullet to square. So I will show you the hover as an example. So here is an example for the hyperlink. So first let's show the effect. So when I move my mouse into this hyperlink, the color will change to the color I defined. When I click on this hyperlink, so the color will also change to the color I defined. So let's look at the source code. And here is the source code. See, for the hyperlink, the cover, this property I changed to the blue means that when I move my mouse to the hyperlink, the color will change to blue. Or when I click on this hyperlink, the color will change to red. So which is exactly shown here. Yes, so you can consider as a very small dynamic effect. And then I will tell you something a little more interesting, funny effect from the CSS. So to make your website look a little different from the others. First is the two-dimension transfer. So for the two-dimension transfer, it means that the elements in the browser will transfer like it's one dimension. So you cannot have like 3 dimensions. So for example, the rotation method, so you can rotate your text, the text with different degree. So the keyword is a transfer, which is the column followed by the keyword rotate. So the parameter is how many degrees you want to rotate. And for these keywords, it means that it's based on different browsers. So if you use Microsoft browser or you use the WebKit browser, so this is based on the kernel of your browser. And then it's for the scale. So for scale, you can also change the scale of your text into either you enlarge your text or smaller of your text. So it depends on your parameter. So here's the syntax transfer column, and this is the keyword followed by the 2 parameters. And then is the screw. Screw is also kind of like rotation, but also the style of your text is also changed. So the keyword is transform, then the skirt, and with different degree, and you can change or transfer your text. So there's a 2-dimensional transfer. Then is the CSS transitions. So transitions allows you to change the property value smoothly from one value to another and over a given duration. So for example, here is the box. We want to change the box, the size of the box. So that is the initial parameter. So the width, height, the background color, and also like the transition period, you want to change the parameter. And here with the column means that you will change gradually. So then you want to change the final value will be the width is 400 pixel and height is 100 pixel. So I will show you the results. So the final result is like this. So that's the initial square parameter we set. Then when we move then it's the CSS transitions. So CSS transitions allows you to change the property value smoothly from one value to another over a given duration. So for example, here we have our square box that is which is have an initial parameter with the height both 50 pixels, means that's a square, and the background color is Cora, and we want to achieve the transition within the width is 1 second, the height is in 0.5 half seconds. So the final rectangular size is with the width, we want to change to 400 pixels, and for the height, we want to change 100 pixels. So the hover means when we move our mouse into this square, so the change will start. So let's see the example for these changes. So here is the example. So that's the initial square we just mentioned. So when we move our mouse the mouse into this squares, right? Then you will see the change starts. So finally, the width will change to 400 and the height will change to 100. So when we move away, we'll change back. When we move back again, it will change. So it will like bring some dynamic effect to your website. So then is the CSS animations. So CSS animations allows animation of the most HTML elements without using JavaScript or Flash. So previously, many websites, in order to make a vivid, nice website, many websites tend to use JavaScript and Flash. But by using JavaScript and Flash, which is good of course, but will make your the website is very heavy weighted. So for many websites, if you have too many JavaScript or Flash the element, so it will take a longer time for you to open this web page. But if you can only achieve this a little dynamic like elements by only using this HTML and the CSS. This make your website much lightweighted. And here's the example. So in this example, we want to move this squares, move around, and also the color will be changed to have some dynamic effect. So here's the initial parameter of this square, the width, height, the background color, also the position, and also the and here's the animation name. We'll give a name, and this the animation duration 2 seconds. So that means the one round of this animation. But if you set this animation iteration count to infinite, it means the animation will keep on without stopping. And then it's the animation direction and the fill mode. So you can try these parameters by yourself. And here's the example start. So here you can see different the value from the 0% to 100%. It means for this animation we divide into 5 sections. So each section we want to do something. So finally will be 5 behaviors. So for this example, I won't show the final results. So you better try yourself. So which I think is funny practice. Now we'll show more examples by just using the CSS and HTML to have a very cool dynamic effect or animation in your website, in web page. So just only use the CSS without using JavaScript or Flash. So we can just use this CSS to design a dynamic bar. I'll show you later to promote the tool. So when you move your mouse into text, some hint will pop out, or is the CSS text overlay image hover effect. Also the loading animation. So when you click something, like there's a clock, something will rotate or something rotates. Give a hint that now you have to wait. And then it's the manual design, or it's more about the dynamic manual design. So I will show you this example now. So here is the first example. It's a dynamic bar. So when we refresh the page, you can see that there's a dynamic effect in this bar. For example, you want to load in some data, it will show this dynamic effect. Enter again. Yes, it's like this, which is pretty cool, right? So the second is the promote tool. So when you move your mouse here, some hint will pop out. So this kind of a method is usually used in some introduction website. So you want to click something, but you have no idea about this link or concept. You can use this method to give some hint to the customer. Then is the loading image. So it means that when you open the web page, you can start with this loading image or loading animation to let the customer wait for a while. So this just use the CSS without using JavaScript or Flash. So here's the like the menu design example. So when I move my mouse into this, then you will see there's a little dynamic effect of this menu. So this is also designed by just using the CSS. So when I browse many websites, you will see the similar effect, right? So then you can look at their source code to see how they design their website and how they can achieve this dynamic effect. Then there's one more example of the dynamic menu. So for example, you can move your mouse to different tag and it will pop out, which is a pretty cool website, right? So that is all about this stylish website with CSS. Then let's move to the next topic, dynamic web pages. So previously I have mentioned several techniques or method to design this small dynamic effects or animation elements into your web pages. But in reality, to design a very professional dynamic web pages, you are required to know more. First, you need to know when do we need these interactive changes or dynamic changes in web design. So first is the style. So for example, the menu item change color when hover. So when you move your mouse to the menu item, so the color or the font size will change, so as I showed you before, or the form elements. So for example, the selections change elements. So for example, you want to someone when you change to fill in the form, so you can have some interactive changes in the form to guide your customer or user. Then is the data or information. So for example, the dynamic text changes, what I just showed you before, and also the data validation. So on the data entry forms. So to achieve this, we can use the nested codes or script. For example, manipulate page elements, or we can retrieve data from the server. So first, let's look at the nested code. So for nested code, first thing to have a very professional dynamic web page. So first thing you need to know is to use the JavaScript. So previously the CSS is just a very simple way to add some dynamic effects, but in order to have a more professional, more powerful effect, you have to use JavaScript. So the way to use JavaScript is that in your HTML file, so you have this keyword script. So this is a two-sided tag. So starting point, ending point, in between, you can put your JavaScript code inside. Then your browser can run this code. So let's see what does this JavaScript do. So here is the start function. So my move, then we define some variables, elements. First is element, then is the first initial position, then is the set interval. For example, the frame with the five intervals, and then is the function with the frame. Then is the if it's judge the position of the elements, then it will clear the interval. Otherwise, the position will change from both for both x and y. It seems that this JavaScript code is moving something. So let's check the effects. So here is the output of that web page embedded with the JavaScript. So here is the click me. Yes, so this JavaScript code to move the squares from here to here. But if we move quickly, you can have some weird effect. Yeah, so that's one way to have some dynamic effect to your web page. Then what I need to know is the web data structures. So we have mentioned this metadata or meta element previously. So from last week, I remember. So the metadata is the meta element is provided metadata. So the information for the browser and for the web server or the developer to reading the document, etc. So as we mentioned before, this metadata is not used for the user. So for user, usually they cannot see this information or data. So only for the browser or the web pages, web server or developer can read this as a document to understand. So what is in this web page. So metadata can be evoked by using a web browser, such as how to display content or reload page, or search engine such as keywords or other web service. So where do we usually put this meta elements or metadata? Just as we mentioned last week, usually we place this information into the document header. For example, here is the header. So after title, we will put the metal information. For example, this property and that's the value to this property, and also the meta name, like author of this website and content. So this won't be shown in the browser. And then let's talk about the cookie. So probably many of you have heard of this cookie before, because when you browse some website, maybe there's a small windows pops out and asks you, do you accept to use cookie in this web page? So then you should know, what does cookie mean? So cookie is a small piece of data sent from a website and stored on the user's computer by the user's web browser while the user is browsing this website. So cookies is used to remember the stateful information, such as the item added in the shopping cart in online store, or to record the user's browsing activity, such as clicking particular buttons or login information, or recording which pages has been visited, paths, etc., etc. Then you may ask, since these cookies will remember our browsing activities, such as login information, you think, so is this cookie safe to use? So can someone steal our login information by reading the cookie? So to answer the question, you have to know more about the cookie. So here is a few restrictions in place to make this process as safe as possible. First is the web servers can only access cookies which are set to their own domain. So when a cookie from website saved to a local computer, no one else can open this cookie, because this cookie is only readable, accessible to the target domain. Even yourself or some other servers from other domain cannot open this cookie because it's all encrypted. And also the cookie, the maximum size is also defined, so it cannot be larger than 4K bytes. So very limited information will be saved in the cookie. And also there's a limit to the number of the cookies per domain. So usually it's 20. So for each domain, maximally you can only have 20 cookies. There's also a limit to the total numbers of cookies on your computer, and this is defined by yourself. So how many cookies you want to put in your hard drive. So then it's the XML. So XML means extensible markup language. For a name, it's kind of similar to HTML, but these two languages are quite different. So XML is used for transfer and the storage of the structured data. So here the structured data is important. The non-structured data cannot be saved in this XML language. So HTML is about displaying data, and XML is about describing information. So that is major difference between these two languages. And here is one example about this XML. So from the language, the syntax, you may think is very similar to the HTML, such as the tag, we have the starting tag and ending tag. But if we look into the content, it's more about the data information. For example, here it's about describe this course or the student, enrolled students. So here we have the course name. So yes, CSE1ITF about our course with the students, different students for each student. We have the full name of the student and what's the course for is this student from, and we can continue to have the whole list of students which is enrolled in the CSE1ITF this subject. That's made a difference between XML and HTML. And last thing I want to talk about is the JSON. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notations. Similar as to the previous XML, JSON is also used to save structured information. So here is his example. So different from the XML, JSON used the JavaScript object syntax to save data. So here's in this example, we have the employees here, and then we use this JavaScript style to save the information about all these employees. And here's more future subject on the web design. So if we want to learn more about web design, you can choose to learn in this subject. So this CSE2WD is for the web design, and this CSE2MA is for the multimedia authoring. So these both subjects will tell you more things about the web design if you feel interest in this web design and consider as your future career. And that's all for today's lecture. So if you have any questions, please send me an email or leave the message in the forum. I will try to reply you as soon as possible. Thank you very much.